the HLP AOR and its role as a sort of a convener, a coordination focal point, trying to harness actors and expertise on HLP-related issues. And the other is around the substance of the principles and what that means for the work of HLP AOR members who are working mainly in that humanitarian context. So one of the things, I mean, I've mentioned already that we're trying to bridge this gap between emergency, crisis, solutions, transitional justice. And the Pinero principles really bring together many of the different legal, policy and normative frameworks into a coherent approach. It's something that we can appeal to, that we can aspire to, and that's really helpful in terms of setting a direction of travel. It's like, in some ways, it's part of a destination. It's a checklist to think about where we're headed. Ombretta rightly raised the wider questions on the sort of right to adequate housing and the other things that we need, but the principles were a real helpful way to check what we're doing and to check where we're heading. So it offers this destination, it's a way of guiding ourselves, but it offers more than that. And the handbook sets out key steps, and the first one of which it mentions is a recognition of restitution rights. And this helps frame so much of our approach. It allows us to advocate, to convince authorities, donors, member states, agencies that no durable solution can be reached truly if HLP justice in the form of restitution or compensation or other issues is not addressed. And the justice element is important. And it's something we are a bit nervous sometimes to talk about, but the principles make that clear, and it's something that we can really call on them and use for our advocacy. And this is what I was discussing with colleagues before this conference about what sort of remarks to make. This was something that came up, was this insistence on justice, the justice aspect that isn't always part of the solutions and the things that we make work in a practical sense. Specifically looking at the principles, looking at Principle 2, and the existence of restitution as a concept, a right, and it can provide a formal and legal basis for the delegitimizing of the arbitrary acquisition of territory, assets, property and land. And it also makes clear the obligations of governments and other controlling authorities towards people seeking to return and reclaim their original homes and lands. And sometimes there's a risk for humanitarians that, especially international ones, that they drop into a space to try and fix things and then they disappear, or they don't disappear. And I think it's really important to make sure we're always thinking about the obligations and the responsibilities of the states in which we're working, but also building those partnerships and relationships with those authorities and also the communities that we're working with. And this is what energizes and drives a lot of the documentation safeguarding work that's going on. Ombretta talked a bit more at length around Principle 15. And the process around trying to safeguard and support households, families, communities in keeping their documents safe, or even just thinking about what kind of documentation they could use for future claims and also in their current aims to try and assert some kind of safe and secure place to live. And there's a role for us as humanitarians in that space, in this gap, trying to improve tenure security for people where they are so that they can live with dignity, and maybe as a stop on the way to restitution as return or another durable solution, fully acknowledging that for some, as Umbretta is saying, they don't have anything to return to. The work we do includes providing information and raising awareness around these issues, counselling to support that and how we engage with these things. I'm sort of reminded of the work that the HLP coordination colleagues have done in Iraq and Ukraine, and we've heard a little bit about the Iraq example today, but to do this. There's often a role in trying to resolve disputes, trying to find alternative ways to resolve disputes to prevent more eviction, to prevent and respond to forced evictions. Within the documentation safeguarding discussion, I won't repeat what Ombretta is saying, but I think it's really interesting in the handbook where they set out these different examples of evidence. It's something we've been trying to really encourage partners and colleagues to look at, different ways that people can show their relationship and their right to a claim of their housing, land and property. And of course, we're often working in customary settings or where there aren't functioning land administration systems. So there's all sorts of ways that are being developed to try and find a way to make some steps toward verifying and recording these housing, land and property rights claims. One of the really important things about the Pinero principles and what we're discussing as well is also the element of reminding us that the work that we're doing in response to a crisis or a conflict, what we can achieve as humanitarians, must be done in connection with those that are working on peace, those that are working on development, those that are working on the rights of people in the places that we're working. And this includes the communities and the local authorities. It's also worth noting, and again the principles are helpful here, that in principle 2, that housing, land and property restitution rights are not prejudiced by the non-return of those possessing these rights. So we must distinguish as practitioners between remedies and durable solutions. So restitution rights are not affected by the voluntary choice of resettlement or local integration. They do not lapse based on a refugee or a displaced person not being able to physically exercise these rights. Local integration does not extinguish a restitution claim. And these are all really important framing aspects for how we think about our work in the short term, but also the longer term. So part of the context in which we're acting, especially in context with cycles of conflict and or crisis leading to displacement, is one in which these principles have a lot to say. We must be mindful of this as we consider our interventions, as our colleagues working to provide emergency shelter, water, food, and protection support, they must all try and think about these HLP issues too. That's what we work to try and get them to think about, and hopefully guide and direct us all towards thinking about these in the context of wider restitution and wider questions of justice. So in a practical sense, this can be the difference between displaced people facing further violence in that moment, further forced evictions, coming to real harm, or being able to live with some kind of dignity even if they're still displaced. But there are tensions between the right to return and the long-term protracted displacement, the scale of restitution or compensation that's required. Many places and spaces coming out of conflict aren't necessarily legally or administratively prepared for processing the massive number of HLP claims. So there's a balance to be struck, and we have to kind of work our way through that. But again, being aware of that is part of the process. Now, the HLP AOR is part of the Global Protection Cluster, and protection in the humanitarian sense is about people being safe from the harms that others might cause them when there's been conflict or crisis risks. And the principles talk about elements that are very important for this. Principle 4 on the right to equality between men and women, about how they can access, control, use the legal security of tenure, ownership, inheritance, restitution, all of these aspects around housing, land and property that are important to have equal access for men and women. Principle 5 states that states should prohibit forced eviction and the destruction of agricultural areas and the arbitrary confiscation or expropriation of land as a punitive measure or as a means or method of war. Again, talking about how we access our food, how we think about wider aspects of life that's beyond just the house, just the shelter that we might stay in. Last point I'll make is just specifically around the coordination role that we play. For the principles to be applied effectively, they need coordination between the international humanitarian response, civil society, authorities, all of those engaged in these projects, this work. We believe that as an HLP-AOR, we have a role trying to bridge that. We're trying to learn how to do it. The more recent partnership between NRC and UN Habitat in leading the HLP-AOR is a really good step to try and make those links better and more practical and more effective. And we think that we can take practical steps. You know, the restitution processes need the inputs and contribution of many stakeholders. There needs to be coordination, relationships to make this happen. Principle 22 calls for this. It can be done by others, but we believe the AOR can also play a part in the humanitarian recovery part of this, making sure we try and bridge and connect those that are working on these issues. The restitution process something that we're trying to do and seeing happen and contribution of many stakeholders in response there needs to be coordination. What's happening in Gaza is relationships to make this happen. Is that we're trying to bridge between the immediate emergency response and the plans and the recovery and the efforts ongoing to think about reconstruction. Principle 22 also sets out responsibility of international actors, and this emphasizes one of our core principles, to try and ensure a holistic and coherent approach that provides clarity on the sequencing and complementarity of the housing, land and property rights protection interventions. And why this matters for me and for colleagues is that too often, as we know, work happens in silos, we work separately, we work differently, and we need to bridge one of our core principles. And I think it's a good try and ensure a holistic and coherent approach that provides clarity on the sequencing and complementarity. I'll finish there just to say that one of the key principles that we want to assert as the HLP. And why this matters for me and for colleagues is that too often, as we know, work happens in silos, we work separately. We really want to make sure we play that bridge one of our core principles. To stand in that gap. I think it's a good try and ensure a holistic holistic and coherent approach that provides clarity on the sequencing and complementarity have an impact on housing and the property right key principles that we want to assert as the HLP. And why this matters for me and for colleagues is that too often, as we know, work happens in silos, we work separately. We really want to make sure we play that bridge one of our to stand in that. And I think it's to try and ensure a holistic and coherent approach that provides clarity on the sequencing and complementarity have an impact on housing and the property right key principles that we want to assert as the HLP. And why this matters for me and now,
thank you for opening the challenge to all of us doing better, for highlighting how much these principles are also aspirations that we strive at achieving in this very, very complex interlinkage between peace and humanitarian and development nexus crisis. And you very thank you for opening the challenge to all of us doing better, for highlighting how solutions principles are also realization that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and for highlighting how solutions coalitions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions coalitions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions coalitions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions coalitions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions coalitions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions we have solutions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions we have solutions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions we have solutions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions we have solutions that we strive at highlighting this. We're going to go very complex before we open for the questions and answers. Humanitarian and development Mansour, very important partnership that you very thank you for opening the challenge HIV/AIDS and we the highlighting how solutions
problem from its origins and to deal with land loss in communities that suffers from internal refugee crisis. Now we're working on many programs in any case of a refugee crisis, especially in countries that has this crisis. We're dealing with the crisis from the beginning, from the humanitarian crisis until the human lives and human being is gain back their dignity and well-being and their rights in a good life. and we're trying to stop human rights violations, and based on the human rights law, and we're putting the human well-being at the center of building growth and development, and restoring peace in regions. There are some obstacles that we face in many cases in the region. I will try again to speak briefly about it. Maybe the government will consider it more. Any international efforts to help these principles and the international law and the international humanitarian law, to put it in an operational path, to execute this laws. We should put things back to their in their path, and whether by the displaced people or the refugees. And this requires many elements. First, to institutions, regulations, whether the executive power, the legislation power, the judicial power. And our colleague from the FAO organization has mentioned that we should reinforce and build capacities of the host communities that host the refugees and displaced people. And we should also recognize the role of the governments and municipalities and the host communities, and their how can they execute and operate in such situations about lands, properties, and housing, and all the important institutions that are working with these refugees and displaced people, and also the legal documentation and all the procedures. And the second thing we should have is to separate powers. The judicial power should act accordingly and should have a political will. Therefore, the ways to have fair and just. I am trying. I'm being brief here. The and we're trying to have institutions do their work separately, so we can reach justice and be fair, to help people regain their lands and properties. And we try to raise awareness around the huge responsibility institutions should assume, and be aware of it, and be as much as responsible as they can, and each do their role. And the third obstacle which we faced in internal displacement, which is the customs the sovereignty of customs that overruled the sovereignty of law. Always the customs and traditions rule the more in the villages within regional communities, more than the law does. And there is which leads to an injustice between these regional communities, and there is discrimination, and there is no justice achieved. And this is a very big challenge, especially in Yemen, Sudan. And they always tell us that you don't have to tell about the women's rights in land and to regain land, because it might create problem in some tribes. The governments and states should document how much and how important the role is to actually help these regional communities to contribute in changing the perspective of the societies and regional communities about human rights and the minority rights. And we should have programs that helps people regain and have restore their lands, the lost lands during times of crisis, to ensure and restore peace and security. Because political orientations and political obligations always dismiss this important aspect, which is justice towards people and to be fair towards people. One of the efforts, the international efforts, should be complementary and should interfere with each other, and everyone should help everyone to improve their shortcomings. For example, the United Nations have established principles in 2000 about restoring humans' right in land and urbanistic. And I want to mention two more points and I will finish. It is very important that there should be an enabling of victims in data information collecting and evaluating damages. And the last thing is I invite and I call the Arab League, which is the main center, regional center in the region, that would help launch an initiative to discuss the principles of fairness and justice, and to discuss the internal crisis solution to contribute to treating the situation and dealing with the situation in an effective way. And sorry to take this time. I tried to be as brief as I could, and thank you so much.
No excuse needed, Ahmad. We are so grateful that you spell out what the human rights-based approach within all of this means. I'm really grateful that you highlighted the complementary role that many of us have as practitioners in a scenery where it is indeed the states that have the obligations to realize these rights. And the role of the handbook herein is really to provide as guidance for all of us on how we can work in these very complex landscapes together. I wanted to open the floor for some questions and answers from the audience. I know we have an extremely skilled and competent audience that sometimes also have questions to the answers themselves. I just want to thank all of you for coming, and the floor is open for any comment or question that you have to our esteemed panelists. I think I may have a helper or two here with a microphone, so just please raise your hand, don't be shy. And as Jim said, we really welcome, to be challenged on our work and to hear more about what kind of solutions you see needing to be put forward. No one has the perfect answer here, so it's an ongoing discussion and reflection about the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Shekla. I had a role in this and want to just mention something that maybe we shouldn't avoid, and that is the long history of this discussion within the subcommission the initiative on population transfer and then on restitution of properties. The kind of conspiring that we did long ago and still do in our work is to try and make the human rights principles operational and practical. And I think the beauty of this handbook is exactly that. It's a testament to the practicality of human rights obligations and the principles not only of statecraft, but also of national reconciliation, which is very much needed in the region. The other suggestion maybe I could open up is how the panelists might see the applicability of the handbook also to the, the looming and actually very much upon us displacement that is taking place in the context of climate change, because much of these principles will also be translatable into that context in the future. So this handbook has quite an important future of application.
Thank you. The floor is open. Don't be shy.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I had a question to Professor Pinheiro concerning the threats against the organizations in charge of the Palestinian refugees, UNRWA, with the closure of their office in Jerusalem and the threat of closing other offices in Palestine. How can you qualify the situation? I would be happy to hear you about that. Thank you. And what can be done about it? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a few more questions and then we'll get an integrated response.
شكرا جزيلا اسمي صلاح.
Thank you so much. My name is Salah. I am from the Center of Land Governance and Environment. I have 2 points. When it comes to displacement in the Sudan context, there are more than 10 million displaced persons because of the war that is ongoing now, and it is equal to the population of Belgium. What we see in the media is where did these displaced people went. Most of them were hosted in their villages that their ancestors leave a long time ago, and the return of the displaced person to those villages and rural areas that hosted millions of people is a practical solution and a natural one to the principles of Pinheiro, because it is based on the practices of the society and its culture. We can say that up to 9.5 million people were in the rural institutions. So it's a reverse displaced, if you want to say so, because their people, their ancestors exiled from those villages, and now they are returning to those areas. So before 3 weeks in Sudan, I noticed that some people, they took over other houses, and when the owner came back, the other person that went to their homes, they said that they protect the home. This logically has something of illogicality. How you came to my home and you say that you are protecting it? This is illogical. However, I noticed that the society understood this issue, and the principal owner of the house, he said to the displaced person, you can stay for a month to have like something in return as you were protecting my house, and this is an exceptional experience that enhance the Pinheiro principles, and adapting the Pinheiro principles to our area. You can say customization. So we want to be in. So you know that Sudan has a big surface, and it has boundaries from Egypt to the south. We don't want Sudan to be enclaved from the MENA region when there is opportunities to development, and of course not to be enclaved from West Africa, because Sudan is situated in the MENA region. Thank you. We have a question.
Thank you. I'm Khalid Khawaldi from Dana Cooperative Jordan, member of the International Land Coalition. I would like to thank you all for your contribution, and Ahmed from the HLRN ended his talks about the sustainable development and holistic and just development, and when we talk about the relief work. So this brings the question to the NRC, if they are reconsidering this, the sustainable development or support when they are working with the refugees, for example. Do they take this into consideration, or you might take this into consideration because it's very important, and this is proved through the studies and analysis that been published. Thank you.
Thank you. Last chance to raise your hand if you have any questions, then we'll give the floor back to the panelists to answer to some of those questions you raised, and also for the panelists to provide some further concluding remarks, should they like to do so. So we'll give the floor back to the panelists then. Thank you.
The gentleman who asked something about UNRWA left the audience. What I'll say is that my mandate is very strict on Syria. I cannot give my opinion, simple impression. But if I would try to pretend that my colleague Francesca Albanese has suddenly come here, and what Florence will have said, and what she's saying every day, that is, of course, it was a shame that several democracies, several member states in the UN have cut the contribution to UNRWA. And I will not have to describe the magnificent work of UNRWA. One of my colleagues, Commissioner Karen Abu Zaid, was during 10 years the director of UNRWA, living in Gaza. Then this is, I think that was a shame, based on denunciations that functionaries of UNRWA were connected to the Hamas organization. And Francesca was very shocked about that. The second point is the absurd decision by the parliament in Israel that characterizing UNRWA as an organization that cannot be tolerated in the territory of the country. But what will happen in terms of the operations of UNRWA, I can't say anything. And it is not connected at all with the principles. But in any case, this is what Francesca Albanese, one of the most courageous special rapporteurs on the occupied territories in Palestine. But I try to give an answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pinheiro. We'll give the floor to Ahmad.
Yeah, if I can connect it, one of the main specificity in our region that we have third parties and non-state actors, they still affect the issue of the long term for the displacement. Whenever the Western countries or from some Arab countries here, they also responsible to holding their international responsibility to address these issues for restitution, land, housing, and properties. So the third actors and the other non-actors, they obliged to redress and put the remedies with the governments in the region to restitute housing and lands properties for the displacement.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just touch upon the question of the gentleman behind there, Salah Bukashawa. On the secondary occupants, basically, I think the Pinheiro principle also protect the rights of secondary occupants because, of course, and that's also an important aspect that also informed several restitution compensation mechanisms that, of course, in situation of displacement where people are displaced out of the properties and other people are maybe displaced in area where they don't have access to other adequate housing. Of course, they also have the needs and the right to housing. So they, in a way, if it's in good faith and to respond to an immediate need with the understanding that, of course, it's occupied for fulfilling a need, not for claiming full ownership, they are protected. Obviously, I think this brings us, of course, as practitioners, as implementing agencies on the ground, always, at the end to find ourselves to mediate between a right and its implementation, and I think is an uncomfortable position. The international rights, the national laws, the customary laws, and the implementation. And I think we know very well that it's an uncomfortable position to be in. It's always easier to be either all on the side of the right or all on the side of the government. So I think is a position where I think whatever you do, you are wrong in a way. There can always be space for criticism, but I think this is also where I believe the MENA handbook provides value in the sense that we build on the principle, we are guided by the principle and by the rights of the people, but at the same time, we need to find a practical way to implement them and get dirty with it in a way, still trying to at the end do our best to achieve the intended outcomes, although of course reality can be less perfect than the initial principle itself. So I think that I would leave it there and pass it over to you.
Good. Well, I don't think that I have a specific question, but just I want to comment on what my colleagues already mentioned and the discussion even in the room here, and with link with what Umberto just highlighted. The key here is the linkages between the humanitarian aids and the development long-term interventions or sustainability. And that's what most of the case studies highlighted as well in the publication, in the manual itself. The key is the cross-sectorial work. Even if we are dealing with some humanitarian activities, but at the same time, we have to think of what next, the challenge that you mentioned, that what the yet will be happened. So the key here is how we link both of them together and movement from just thinking of humanitarian activities into more linkages for peace-building activities. To do so, we have to consider the rights of the host community, the rights of the refugees, the rights of the IDPs, and have them in the same level of consideration to avoid the more conflict, because these principles are aimed to have the peace building at the end. We have a lot of cases documented, which means that there are practical solutions that, if consulted and have with the different stakeholders, it will improve the situation with the different communities, and at the end ensure the food security and productivity of the land as we are considered for the security. So it is a cross-sectorial work. It is the linkages that most of you mentioned and related to the humanitarian development peace nexus, and that's what we need in the MENA region to ensure that the conflict or post-conflict activities are addressing all people at the same time.
Thank you. Yes, agree, totally. I'll try and address a couple of the questions just briefly. On the climate change question, yes, that's going to be a massive, massive impact in terms of people moving, already is. I don't know the history of it, but I know Scott Leckie was mentioned earlier. I know he's done some work developing these peninsular principles, which are an attempt to try and create some momentum around principles that will be applied for situations of climate change when land is no longer habitable or people are having to move. So that might be worth having a look at on certainly the work of Displacement Solutions have been looking at that. But it's something we're asking all the time. Is the impact of climate change something that's like substantively shifting what we need to do in terms of how we respond? Or is it a case that there are more things happening, so we need to, it's like scale? And like that's a question we're trying to ask certainly within our work. You know, if the place you would return to is persistently flooded or no longer inhabitable, what does that mean? How do we deal with that at scale? So yeah, very good question. Echo Ombreta's comments on the secondary occupation situation. And I think one of the main areas of work that we see NRC do, but also partners from the Housing, Land and Property Area Responsibility, is around dispute resolution and trying to support mechanisms in communities or build the capacity there if it's not there to try and resolve some of these disputes. I mean, I've seen people who are displaced and living in a sort of camp-like setting who could go home in terms of the safety, but they know there's someone in their house who doesn't want them to, and that's going to cause a problem if they return. So they're stuck in this place without the support around either the legal framework and processes or some other way. They are stuck there. But yes, that can be a creative solution to finding ways for people to stay. Sustainable development, just finally. Yeah, I think within NRC, always asking that question, where does our work begin and where does it end? The temptation to try and think we can do everything when we know we shouldn't and we can't, but trying to be really aware of who are the key partners and the key, and make sure our own interventions are mindful of what else is going on, either from before or in the future. So trying to be sensitive to the context to really do that analysis to understand that. And I think that's true for a lot of the work we're trying to encourage more and more, is that analysis that takes seriously what's happening with land, with the way it's managed and administered in a place where we might see a crisis or a conflict. We try and sometimes talk about HLP as like this golden thread that is through all of these areas, and it's like knowing what's our part to play and what isn't. But yes, it kind of links with how we think about working with livelihood situations, areas of how we get our food, what happens, what does the impact of our interventions do. So always a call for more integration, connection, better relationships, always a challenge as well. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists and the audience for these incredibly interesting discussions. We could go on and on. We hope that this is just the beginning. It's an open invite to work with us and to engage and to help us all do better, so that we also support governments, hold them accountable, and propose solutions based on a people-centered approach. This is really key. I like what you said about the principles being our guiding lights, and that's the same way it is with a human rights-based approach. It goes back to everything that we have discussed today, particularly the role of women, the role of host communities. When Joseph brought up climate change, I really wanted to add, that what climate change impact has in common with the situation that we're already in is that it's always disproportionately impacting in a negative way those that are the most in a marginalized situation already, those that are already in a vulnerable situation, amongst other refugees and displaced persons. And that's why it's so important that we focus on work around the rights of those people as the point of departure. We could go on and on. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to discuss with you all, and I hope that the discussions will continue in the corridors as we move to the next events. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone online. Thank you to the interpreters who made this possible for all of us to communicate. And we look forward to continue our joint work.
Independently of the situation.
You see, in the end, the turnout was good because this morning there was some confusion between other events. One was cancelled, the one here before us.
Yeah.
They didn't do it.
But it's good that we have to respond to it.
Yes, and we will get the recordings to share them. Those who asked the question left, they can go back to the recording and hear your answer.
Ou então Something that I was intending to say that I think the special character of the principles is they were not established by member states. I think this was the right decision, because if the principles were transmitted, then we should then there would be something ritual. And then I think they survived in 25 years because of what Joseph is saying in terms of and very much influenced by angels. Because in fact, the principles are a vehicle of angel expectation in terms of personal character. In a quarter of century, this is a miracle. And congratulations to have marked this celebration.
كاين شي واحد من الداخل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا أتشرف الجهة الإدريسية أتشرف بإدارة هذه الجلسة التي تنظر إشكاليات العقار في ارتباطها بالإسكان في ارتباطها بالتخطيط الترابي. طبعا كمقدمة يمكن أن نتحدث عن المسألة العقارية وحضورها على مستوى الخطاب الرسمي. على مستوى الخطاب الرسمي يمكن أن نتحدث عن مجموعة من الإصلاحات على المستوى القانوني كما على المستوى المؤسسي فيما يتعلق بالإشكالية العقارية. نتحدث هنا عن مجموعة من القوانين، قانون 47/18 المتعلق بإصلاح على مستوى تدبير العقار الموجه للاستثمار. نتحدث عن قانون 55/19 المتعلق بتبسيط المساطير الإدارية. يمكن أن نتحدث كذلك عن القوانين الموجهة لبعض الأنظمة العقارية كأراضي الجموع، قانون 62/17 63 64، مجموعة من القوانين، مجموعة من الإصلاحات. ومع ذلك ثمة كوابح جمة، ثمة إشكاليات واختلالات ومظاهر عجز على مستوى هذه المنظومة. السؤال هنا عن آليات التخطيط الترابي الاستراتيجي وحضور العقار على المستويات المختلفة، على مستوى التخطيط الترابي، على مستوى التعمير، كما على مستوى آليات الإسكان. لا اختلاف على أن العقار هو آلية من آليات تدبير الحكم، هو آلية من آليات الضبط الاجتماعي، هو آلية من آليات تدبير الثروة وإنتاج الثروة. ونتساءل عن حضوره في المخططات الاستراتيجية، في المخططات الترابية كالمخطط التوجيهي للتهيئة للجهوي لإعداد التراب، والمخطط التوجيهي للتهيئة العمرانية على مستوى التعمير، ووثائق التعمير بصفة عامة وعلى رأسها تصاميم التهيئة. هذه إشكاليات وأسئلة نطرحها على المتدخلين، علما بأن ثم تعارضات على مستوى السياسات القطاعية، قطاعات التعمير وقطاعات الفلاحة وقطاعات إعداد التراب والسياحة وما إلى ذلك، تعارضات كبيرة. أضرب مثالا بسيطا، التعارضات التي تكون بين مدارات التهيئة وبين المدارات الفلاحية. المرسوم يحدد مدار الري ومرسوم آخر يحدد المدار الحضري، وثمة إشكاليات على مستوى التدبير وعلى مستوى تقييم وتقدير المساحات المتعين فتحها في المخططات على مستوى المدن. نحتاج إلى آليات تخطيطية تقوم بالتحكيم بين مختلف المصالح القطاعية. نحتاج إلى تدبير هذا التحكيم بين المصالح المختلفة على مستوى العقار، علما بأن العقار هو جزء لا يتجزأ من السياسات العمومية، إن كان على مستوى إعداد التراب، الإسكان، التعمير، الفلاحة وغيرها من السياسات القطاعية. هناك إشكالية دقيقة إشكاليات دقيقة على مستوى التعمير لم تحسم بعد على المستوى القانوني كما على المستوى المؤسسي.
Decided we can mention that to change between what is the real estate and how for urbanization, and would like to take part of it to be done in another residential project. And there are many questions that we raise to the speakers, knowing that the mechanisms all over the country for the management of partnerships among parties, it needs a proactive study. We cannot think of a planning without a proactive study that can sort out and understand the information. And this is what is missing most of the time, that when we have in a planification or a planning or a mapping that is part of the housing management, and we don't have the geographical information in an accurate way. Among the questions that we are banking on during this time is the VAT burden, knowing that the real estate, and we would like to hear some figures that shows the differences among us in many countries, and what is the structure of the projects, and also the VAT burden. Like the city of Essaouira or Setat or other cities, they have really said that it goes over 1,000 acres. How can this real estate be implemented in 3 years, the legal timeline? And we know that it may go up to 7 years. We cannot have an urban zone in a short time. Otherwise, it will be losing the certificate or the permission. And also in terms of the taxation and many other taxation. I think the situation is very complex and thorny, and it requires a lot of reforms. And we don't like to see certain proposals that they are calling for the reform of the institutions. We hear talking about the urbanization entity. We are talking also about talk about the fund of real estate and the High Council for the info and other things that have not been implemented. There are so many problems, complex, minute. We will listen in the first place to Mr. Ahmed Maliki, who is a professor of from the Faculty of Law or School of Law in the city of Satat, and also specialized in urbanization and law. And also we have Mr. Tawfiq Bahi. He will present himself, talking about the regional structured plan of housing and what required in terms of governance and strategic planning. There is also Mr. Mohammed Murad to talk about the work of the public stakeholders, private sector, like the Al Umran group. I greet all the panelists I apologize if I have not listed the name and to present all the panelists. You will have the opportunity to do that. The floor is to Mr. Ahmed Al-Malki.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. شكرا السيد رئيس الجلسة الأستاذ سيدي عبد الواحد الإدريسي. في بداية هذه المداخلة لابد من كلمة شكر للجهات المنظمة.
To thank the organizers for their invitation, and as the moderator of this session said, this session will gravitate around the urban planning and real estate. To which extent this design will involve real estate, and we will read it. It is a collaborative intervention with Al-Idrisi, and we will talk about some of the challenges and how to improve this. Of course, this design or plan, as I like to name it, the planning, it is a document for the urban planning at the national level. It will organize all the organizations, and it will give them the ability to implement. And more than this, the law consider it a ground. It is a document that is considered a ground and a reference on the national level. And this plan is aiming to establish a balance between the state and its regions in establishing good land governance. And this is something that has complexities, whether we want it or not. And we need the raw material to implement this plan. So we are facing an equation that we need to solve. So we conducted a lot of researches, and the state needs about 500 hectares yearly. So the question here is there a place for real estate in this big plan?
إذن سوف أتقاسم معكم هذه الإشكالية في.
So we will talk about this problematic in this presentation, and in the first point we will see the inaccuracies on the low level. And then we will tackle in the second act about the process of looking for an efficient policy in this regard. So for the regional design for territory and real estate, it has a nature, a judicial nature. So we decided to tackle certain issues. This is not the whole issues that we are facing. The first choice in this regard is the lack. We are lacking a law that integrates real estate when it comes to national territory and urban planning. So sorry, we can't hear the speaker. We are lacking a mutual framework to address this issue of real estate. There is no holistic vision, and this goes back for different factors. For example, the multiplicity of systems and the real estate that is registered and the non-registered ones. And we need to resort to laws, but unfortunately we cannot implement this. This is not a good thing. For example, the Article 39 is already issued and it is not implemented unless it is implemented by the courts. There is the other law about land confiscation, and also it is only implemented by courts. And the nature of laws that is ruling lands that compromise the integration of big lands. And this causes divisions because sometimes a certain ownership might compromise an investment, and this is a big problematic. And we can add the costs of real estate. It is really costly here in Morocco, and researchers highlight that the cost of real estate is between 30 to 60% in comparison with other countries. France, for example, it is 15 up to 30%. Canada is 13%, 30 to 40% in Turkey, 15% in Tunisia, and that's a regional example. There is no amendment for the real estate law because there are a lot of suggestions and recommendations that didn't see the light of the day. It was not amended and implemented. There was a project for urbanism that issued the Article 37 that was a bit courageous because it gave the upper hand to the urban planning on the cost of real estate. And also we can add that there is no governance tool. As the moderator indicated in the introduction, when he talked about the irrigated lands and the real estate. And each type of land has its own law. And when there is a conflict between different types of lands, what law we need to resort to. So briefly, this was some of the issues that concerns the law aspect, and for the institutional aspect, there is a problem that is not less important than what was said about the judicial aspect. We need organizers, we need committees and institutions that organize real estate. For example, there is the Ministry of Interior Affairs that governs the collective lands. There is the Ministry of Finance that governs the properties of the state. And a lot of stakeholders and institutions that governs its properties. So there is a lot of interventions, and this thing might compromise the implementation of investment projects and land policies. So with this lack of tools, the officials' discourse about the social justice and democratizing the urban planning is subject to questioning. So we need tools to enable the participation and the transformation of this question of real estate to be a social question shared by all of the people. And we need to mobilize the lands, maybe by land confiscation. And this is something that is very complex, and sometimes there is the dominance of the central power, despite of what is said by the charter of the centralization. There is the non-issuing of the regional agency. There is the lack of harmony when it comes to public interventions. We find that this party is saying something that is contrary and contradictory to the other parties. So there is a lack of a clear policy to deal with this issue on different aspects. So here we pose the question, what is the efforts conducted by the state, and how we can improve the solutions that we proposed and that aims at giving a legal status to this issue. The state has done a lot of efforts, and we can start with the Constitution of 2011 and the horizon that it opened, and the rural communes, real rights that is meant to improve rights of lands, the right of Zina, and now we are talking about the rights of property. There is the new laws that opened possibilities for the collective lands and giving jurisdiction for the owners and to buy the collective lands or sell them, and the old laws were prohibiting this. There is also the law 1957 that is related to rural communes, and it facilitated the implementation of some projects in this regard, such as the land lot and the transformation or the transferring of lands to the communities. there is 1847 that is concerned with the changing of the legal status of certain lands. And also we need to obligate the administration and the public administrations to take the necessary steps and to considerate the plan, the regional plan for national territory. This is one of the positive impacts that these laws brought. However, despite of these efforts, we need a lot of recommendations because there are barriers and real estate is still it is a cornerstone, and we need recommendations for improvement. So the recommendations is establishing a fund for the sprawl of urbanism and the necessary data is telling that the percentage of establishing green spaces is not beyond 20%. It means that 80% of lands is only on the paper. Because the law says that the owners after 10 years can restore their lands and prohibit the planner from implementing the public project. There is also the problem of administration, and the state is in the need of agencies that are specialized in urban planning. There is another important idea that is considering real estate and dealing with it as a national treasure. It means that we have interest in that. If there is a conflict of a public interest with a private one, we need to go with the public interest. It is very clear. There is a custom that is called safka, and it is not good for us now because when there is a conflict, you whether sell or buy. So why not giving this custom a legal status or improving it? So there are a lot of things that we need to improve this question, and we need to develop mechanisms and transform the real estate from something that is merely institutional to be something that the society is interested in as well. The recommendation by the urban planning notice, it is contradictory to, and if we were championing the laws that organize the collective lands, so when we have an urban document, the real estate will change its nature from an urban document to an urbanistic one. So we need laws that go hand in hand with these changes. We need to establish a land governance that can react with the changes. Implementing the legal framework to cover all national territory, and this will facilitate implementing the policies and unifying our policies. So we need a holistic notice when it comes also to taxes. We need to review the laws, and when it comes to implement them, so this need to be done and to aim to the betterment of the society. This is also one of the mechanisms that might bring about land justice on the level of the academia. We can implement specialties related to real estate and urban planning on the level of the faculty of law or the judicial institute, because a judge needs to understand well everything related to lands on the level of the Hassan II Institute as well. So we need to have these selective readings, and due to constraints of time, we need 3 main points that I think it is necessary. We need an arsenal of laws that is amended and adequate, a holistic vision that is based on coordination, and the third point, and finally, avoiding the compromising and short-term solutions. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Merci infiniment, Si Maliki, à travers sa lecture.
Thank you very much. According to his perspective, he did brought up very important aspects. Especially the lack of organizations and urban planning and organizations of and lack of land planning and management organization, whether in the institutional aspect, on different levels of planning. Monsieur Tawfiq Bahi is an engineer and a director of a study and research office. He will talk to us about the regional plans as a tool of governing, of territorial governing. The floor is yours. Merci. Thank you very much for the organizers. Of course, this is a very important organization, and I will talk to you about the regional plans of the habitat and the difficulties we face in implementing these strategic plans. There is a process that has already been launched, like many other Arab countries. We have already gained time. It's faster. Whether in the habitat materials. This question does really disturb the government's potential. It's in this sense that there's a evaluation of the outdated politics should be done, and the social starts with the Moroccan choice. To activate a new tool after the 2008 plan. The work will start on a regional level and will go from on. What is this regional plan? What is the goals? There is a strategic and adaptation. We will work on concrete solutions and programs to conclude. It's a regional plan and strategic plan document. We wish that in few years this would be the base of urban planning with the details ready to be used by the governments. Of course, it's a document that has a level. What are the reasons of this? It's to adapt the offer to the need. There is a problem between the offer and the demand. And we work on the dynamics on a local level and demographic level, and the pressure on land markets and properties. And of course to propose and suggest a plan of territorial governance. The specific goals are to study and evaluate on a long term the habitat units. Is to define the demand of urban property, rural and urban properties by type and financial capacity, etc. And to prosper the land reserves that are discernible and available to mobilize to concretize these plan. We have three phases. We have the phase of elaboration of a methodology of study. The second phase is to do a survey and a diagnosis and analysis. Of course, we have presentation of context, of regional context, and the state of the habitable units. And we have identification and estimation of the need of a habitat, and to realize a survey or interrogation of the demand of habitats, and to do a reasons of and to prosper the lands. And the third phase is to elaborate a strategic vision with an action plan. It's to create housing and to provide housing. It's an economic goal, and it's a social need. And we need to take into consideration the environmental pressure that we have to take into consideration, and to take an approach with different intervenants, and with diagnostics and strategics, and from different sectors. I will not take long. In the context, in the regional context, we are going to talk about the it's a very detailed study about the quantitative aspects and qualitative aspects of the demand. The quantitative aspect of the demand is the level of structure of demand, and the main points of attraction and the trajectories and motivations of demand. The second and the qualitative aspect of the demand is the typology and the consistency of the demand, and the status of the demand, and the way of acquiring and purchasing a land, to see if they have an opportunity to mobilize these lands. Now we need around 18,000 habitable units in this area, for example. But the urgent need here is more social. There is a problem. As you can see in this area, we don't have housing units. And the same thing in Qalat Sragna. There is a economic demands, and there is this possibility of using an already existing lands. The strategic reserve is really enough, and This is the human resource interest. Well, we should not forget that these studies are only prospective studies, and we need to follow up, and we need to see what the next steps are. Thank you so much. Merci, Monsieur Bahi. Monsieur Bahi nous a parlé de cette stratégie, de cette nouvelle stratégie. C'est une nouvelle ancienne stratégie qui a existé depuis des décennies. C'est un mécanisme, un outil pour le ménagement. Il y a une méthodologie de ce plan régional, de ce plan
معروفة في مثل هذه الدراسات مرحلة التشخيص تشخيص الخصائص وتقدير.
On doit estimer, we have to estimate the areas to be used for these residential projects. We've talked about the mobilization of the land resources and this diagnostics, participative diagnostics that leads to perception that follows a sustainable based approach, which prospection and a good use of the land following a strategic view and vision. And we have to estimate the needs and to orient the programs at the level of habitat. We will move to Mohamed Mourad Sqat, director in charge of the biggest question, the biggest issue of land in Al Umran. Will give us a reflection about the role of public actors and tools of partnership, especially private-public partnership. We will present precisely the case of the holding in Umran. The floor is yours, Mr. Sqat. Thank you very much. In the name of Allah, the merciful, the most merciful, ladies and gentlemen.
En œuvre sa politique en matière d'habitat et d'urbanisme, et vous présentez aussi sa stratégie foncière qui lui permettra d'assurer sa pérennité et de répondre à la commande publique, notamment les programmes gouvernementaux qui lui sont demandés par les pouvoirs publics, le ministère de l'Habitat. Alors, si vous permettez, notre présentation va tourner autour des axes suivants. Une présentation du groupe Le Omran, puis les programmes stratégiques de l'État sur lesquels travaille Le Omran, et puis les orientations stratégiques développées par Le Omran en matière foncière. Cette stratégie, elle est axée à deux niveaux, une revue de sa stratégie foncière, et puis Le Omran s'est lancé au niveau de la digitalisation. Alors, par rapport au premier point, la présentation du groupe Le Omran. Donc, le groupe Le Omran est un acteur stratégique pour la mise en œuvre de la politique de l'État en matière d'habitat et de développement urbain. Et il agit au niveau de 4 lignes métiers. Premièrement, l'aménagement du foncier, qui par la mobilisation et la valorisation des réserves foncières. La deuxième ligne métier concerne le développement territorial. La troisième ligne métier concerne le traitement de toute forme d'insalubrité. Et la quatrième ligne métier, c'est la production et le divertissement des offres foncières. Alors, par rapport les chiffres, le groupe en termes de chiffres, alors le groupe il est composé de 10 sociétés filiales, plus une holding qui coiffe l'ensemble de ces sociétés filiales. Le groupe dispose d'une couverture territoriale très large par 50 agences au niveau national et une agence à l'international. Il regroupe pratiquement 881 collaboratrices et collaborateurs. Le groupe profite d'une expérience. En termes d'investissement annuel, il atteint 6 milliards de dirhams par an et sa production annuelle dépasse les 14 000 unités. Alors le groupe dispose d'une couverture territoriale complète et un déploiement territorial sur les 12 régions du royaume. Alors les 10 sociétés filiales du groupe, il regroupe les 12.
This covers 12 economic regions in Morocco, and this covers economic region, and the filial company covers 3 regions in 3 regions of the south. The repartition of the agencies at the level of the territorial levels and different agencies in every region. Red spots are filial, the green are agencies for new cities, and the white are territorial agencies. So, as for the strategic programs of the state, the group is charged of many projects, and it's committed in public projects and to fight insalubri and inappropriate habitat. The structuration, and it's engaged in the low real estate value habitat, and also the agglomerations, developing the agglomerations for inhabitants, and also the operations, and it can construct these habitat and these residents. Also, we have social programs that don't exceed 250,000 dirhams. The New Cities program also is a new concept. It's deeply engaged in the programs of the construction, which are under the directives of His Majesty the King. May Allah protect him and glorify him. And also we have urbanization programs that are special programs of the South provinces. It's engaged in the programs of the rundown houses. Also, the Group Al-Umran is engaged in this at this level. The concept of new cities is a challenge to lift by Al-Umran. We have launched 4 new cities of 5,000 hectares for 100,000 inhabitants. The new city of Sarafat in the north of Morocco, launched in 2009. 2009 Tamsna 840 hectares in 2007. Al Khayaita next to Casablanca in 2009, and Tamsurt in 2004. More than this, the group intervenes in more than 50 urban poles. In terms of realization of governmental programs, we have to notice that to note that they have ameliorated the conditions of life of more than 270,000 families moved from slums, and also we have low real estate value projects, and we have tackled rundown houses, and we renovated them in the framework of urban upgrading. I seize this occasion in order to highlight and focus on the engagement and commitment of Al Amran Group, which is for the new program of subsidy of housing, 41,000 units between 2023 and 2028. We have different densities. Every part is different from another. The number of houses to produce is very important. Let's move to the strategic orientations developed by Al Amran in terms of real estate strategies. Before starting this part, I think it's of great importance to share with you the real estate acquisitions operated by Al Amran Group during the last 10 years. These acquisitions shifted from 400 hectares a year to 800 hectares a year, and we have a tendency to move to 200 hectares. We have to note that all the acquired terrains and fields by Al Amran and to 90%, and they belong to public domain of the state, and the conventions of mobilizations and the collective real estate mobilized by Al Amran through conventions of mobilizations of the collective real estate that belongs to ethnic communities. It's mobilized by Group Al Amran. So we are continuing our work in this level and to launch the mobilization of the real estate so that we would be able to answer and to meet our objectives and achieve the projects that we have in charge. We are obliged to continue to mobilize real estate and to grow our objectives, and the objective behind this mobilization is to grow the real estate reserve of the group and to mobilize a purified real estate and easily exploitable. We have talked about the problems found at the level of real estate in Morocco. The real estate to be mobilized must be registered, and the level of linking and linkage must be affordable, and so that to be able to build projects, and all this in order to have the raw material that can enable Al Amran to achieve these projects and to meet the public command needs. The first action that was launched is to define our needs in real estate for the 5 upcoming years. our need for the 5 upcoming years is about 9,957 hectares to mobilize during this time, and we notice that our need in real estate focuses on six big economic regions like Casablanca, Rabat, Agadir, Fas, Meknes, and others. This need for real estate must be mobilized by Al Umran. How are we have conceived the implementation of this mobilization in terms of real estate? We have 3,000 hectares of real estate of public property which is mobilized by Al Umran, which is more problematic because there are urbanism documents that not cover this type of real estate, and linking problematic is there with the public authorities, and also in order to coordinate to use them by the end, we need 56 hectares to mobilize, and it is still to be prospected. To meet this end, our real estate strategy was revised, and it focuses on 4 main parts: the amelioration of land management and use of resources, the projects in which we are going to focus must be targeted projects and that meet the need for a rationalization of projects. Real estate at the disposal of Al Umran by the public authorities, a part was dedicated for use by the group, and the other for the real estate developers to accomplish their mission. This real estate at the disposal of real estate developers within the framework of partnership. The non-mobilized real estate, we have restored it to be used in our projects. The second axis, the extension of the prospection. We have out of 9,000 hectares, we have 6,000 hectares for prospection, and they are prospected, and 2,800 are prospected at the level of collective lands. We will try to develop our relations with land owners like Directorate of Rural Affairs and Domain Directorate and all the authorities in charge of the land management. And this concerns the way we are going to fund this land, and the main action here is we have developed platforms, commercial platforms on Google Map background that enables everyone wishing to acquire a land to go to this platform and to choose their product on which there are many characteristics, and to have an appointment so that you will have a flow to know how to prospect the land and to how to assess the needs. The last axis concerns the digitalization. the objective of the group is to launch the digitalization for the reliability of data in order to monitor the projects and the coordination between different entities and electronic management of data and exchanges with partners who want to are partners to Al Umran and want to monitor and to can go directly to our projects on the platform. Very quickly, this platform was developed by Al Umran. It was called ENG platform. Its technological component is a SIG, System Information Geographic Information System, and the dashboards to follow and to monitor the flow of workflows, and to manage the documents, to monitor all the forms of acquisition and the realization of the projects, and to see to what extent these projects are implemented. In the same framework, this platform ENG is a real estate-based module. It's an interactive site that allows to monitor the files of the group and the projects of the group. I will go directly to the platform, to the geographic information system and the dashboards. So I prepared two videos to show you how this platform works and all the possibilities that it offers. When we identify land, we have to enter all the different characteristics by parcels and land parcels, and all information are typed in on this platform, and the part acquisition is found on this platform. Then the dashboards are provided. Once the land real estate is acquired and registered, it's given to the project manager to be implemented. The project manager or project leader will make sure that the level of make sure that the acquired land is set for the works, and then in real time we can follow and monitor the projects, and we can monitor and we have see different colors. The red is beyond the deadlines, and I'm sorry for having taken more than the time allocated.
Thank you, Mr. the President, for your presentation about the Umran and on the national level when it comes to planning especially, and we talked about a lot of needs when it comes to real estate and the prospects of the future about the database. And he finished about when he talked about the efforts and the digitalization and monitoring. Thank you so much, Mr. the President. After hearing these interventions, we open the door for questions and dialogue. I will I hope that the speakers or the audience will be brief in their questions or comments. Good morning. She informed me that we need to be very brief.
So we have only 2 minutes that we will give to questions. We have to be brief, please. I will take the names. Mr. Abdelilah, Sibur Zaid, and Madame Shaima.
Urbaniste de formation.
I had a training in urbanization, and I am chief of projects in France. And my question is to Mr. Abahi, first of all, about why have you chosen to do a regional plan on a regional level and not on a local scale? Because all what has been done can be done locally, and I think it will be even more efficient to do it on a local level, and also to integrate all the elements concerning the social residence, which is the equivalent equivalent to local planning of habitat in France, and that can we answer to some needs. So in France, the local plan of habitat answers to the social needs, and also allows to the promoters to have a certain percentage in their real estate program and planning in general. That was my first question. You already took the 2 minutes, so please be quick. So my question is about the design of the operation that you have presented, the new program of Habitat. We know that it's a program of 250,000, and how can we accompany it in a judicial and financial way. So, hello, I would like to...
The relationship between land with development, from my humble perspective, I believe that we first need to have to consider development at first rank. What Mr. Malki shared is important, but we are still lagging behind nationally wise. This would cause certain shortcomings in terms of the implementation. I collaborated with Mr. Tawfiq al-Bahi, and I would like to share some elements. The idea of the structure, the planification. We could answer or resolve the problem with the household and the real estate. This is a very challenging equation. We in Morocco, we have documents, but we don't have a vision at the regional level. Therefore, we wanted to start from the region and also to look for the opportunities. So we have the strategic aspect and the procedural one. Thank you. Mr. Zarq.
Merci aux organisateurs, merci aux conférenciers, merci aux...
Thank you, dear representers, speakers, and moderator. We would love to have more time because the interventions in the topic is very important. I will try to be briefed, as you said. So, two presentations of Mr. Bahid Melki got my interest, and there was a sentence said by Mr. Melki about the lack of judicial text on real estate. You know that in Morocco there is a great deal of legislation regarding real estate, about 3,000 decrees and laws. I think the problem is not about legislation or lack of judicial text, but the problem is about some texts that should be updated, that are obsolete and or not applicable, and we don't implement them anymore, like about the urbanization process, and we had some experiences dates back to the period of protectorate, and I think...
Intervention de l'habitat. Là, je précise, le plan régional d'habitat sont des...
And I think we can benefit from this regional scheme for territory management that we did before. And when we talk about habitat, we don't talk about just residence. The habitat is the whole sector of infrastructure, equipment that are involved. Because when we talk about real estate in this regional planning of habitat, the land or the property or the real estate is the most important and basic thing, and Mr. Bahi has said, and I think that the real estate requires more analysis, and also it's a matter of mentality. And thank you. Well, I'm sorry to stop you, but I have no choice. We go to Mr. Nordin.
مباشرة كان بودي أيضا أن أتقدم بمداخلة، ولكن سأكتفي بال...
I wanted to say that the studies about habitation are not new. And what is known by 2020, we have done this in 2008 on the regional level, and the needs to habitat in each region is necessary, and we won't start from zero. The issue here is not the lack of studies, but the coordination between them. We have a lot of studies on the level of many ministries. So this leads me to future studies, and we need to considerate every issue, and we have a study when it comes to new cities, and we need to protect these real estates and lands, and we won't be looking for something beyond this. Now Al Umran is looking for 9,000 hectares, and the numbers that the president provided stopped in 2010. It was about 400 hectares to be mobilized, and before 2010 we saw that there was the mobilization of more than 10,000 hectares. So is there any study by the Umran when it comes to taxes and the use of the lands of the state? And it is very costly. It costs almost $8 dirhams. Now, is there an evaluation for the incomes of these investments? We put this in a certain bank, and if we put this in a certain bank, it will gain revenue. So for Al Umran, what is the gain when it comes to these lands that it has now? And I'm talking about all the different types of lands that had been mobilized. My question, always in these ministerial programs, it costs 140,000 dirhams. Maybe now I am far from the Directorate of Habitation. What is the necessity of providing such a program if it stopped in 2010? So why we need to mention this program? And my pivotal question is, what are the revenues of such a program? Of course, I apologize because we don't have much time. Such a debate requires a lot of time. We will stop after the two last questions. First, at the beginning of the presentation, Professor Idrisi discussed many issues when it comes to lands within urban areas, and we cannot exploit them because we cannot have land lots in these urban areas, or because of the lack of a legal framework. My question simply, what is the barrier to establish such a legal framework and provide documents, especially that these lands are registered? So what is the issue here, and why the state wouldn't intervene in such case? So sometimes when there is a land that belongs to the state, and it might pass them to other companies. Thank you for your remarks. The problem here is the relation between the real estate and the urban planning. So we have a lot of considerations, and we need to planify well, and we need to get rid of prejudice and to have a holistic vision. So in other states, maybe they have different systems. However, for ours, there is a complexity within our system. When we talk about awqaf and the hubus lands, there is a lot of complexities. Maybe to overcome them, it was better to concentrate on conducting studies in order to find solutions. Regarding the general urban planification, the state concentrated on the CPEs and didn't focus on the document for the regional planning of habitat as document of reference for 10 years scale, and it draws just the steps and the methodology. I think it
وكذلك الالتقائية ديالها مع السياسات العمومية في ميدان تخطيط المجال بصفة عامة والاستجابة للحاجيات السكنية بصفة خاصة. وشكرا.
شكرا جزيلا لكل المتدخلين. طبعا عندي طلبات أخرى ولكن أعتذر بشدة على الاستجابة للطلبات. هناك طلبات أخرى قبل منك. لا أنت يا تفضلي أستاذ تفضلي.
أنا رندا جلال، أستاذ في كلية تخطيط عمراني جامعة القاهرة. فأنا مبهورة من امبارح لما شفت تجميع الأراضي في السيشن بتاعت وزارة الفلاحة، والنهاردة عايزة أرد على شيماء اللي بتقول ليه اشتغلتوا ريجونال وبعدين لوكال. أنا جو سوي étudiée en France, étudiée.
I studied in French and locally and nationally.
إقليمية علشان ننزل للمستوى ده. فأنا بثني على رويدا والحاجة بتتعمل. أنا شايفة التخطيط الإقليمي والأراضي بيتعمل زي ما الكتاب بيقول بالظبط. أي نعم هيبقى فيه جود بوينت وفي باد بوينت، بس أنا مبهورة بالشغل. فأنا بشكر بس يعني.
شكرا.
فعايزة أقول لهم يعني بالراحة.
شكرا جزيلا. طبعا سأتعسف على المتدخلين مطالبا إياهم بالإيجاز كذلك دقيقة 30 ثانية و20 جزء من المئة لكل واحد منهم.
تفاعلا مع الحضور الكرام، بطبيعة الحال هذه الإشكالية العقارية.
Interact. Let me before that clarify. I never said. So we need organized law. We need to include the real estate that requires something that is had less.
قضية المنفعة العامة.
So the public interest, something this is important. Public interest, this is a big question. But the implementations is very challenging. Today we're talking about the preparation of the green land, let alone to be having a new concept, modern cities. So the new cities, most of them is a fiasco. So the preparation of that, there was a warning before that. And to balance between the different policies nationally, locally, and regionally. Imam Malik. So we cannot
على المستوى المنهجي يمكن أن نتفق ويمكن أن نختلف, c'est-à-dire sur le plan stratégique et sur le plan méthodologique, comment on a mis en place, comment on a choisi les opportunités foncières comme étant des espaces d'accueil pour ces vies nouvelles, etc. Bon, سؤال قنبلة بإيجاز كذلك.
Merci. Bon. Alors, rapidement, c'est juste pour la question.
Just quickly, working on a regional level, it's something new in Morocco, and I've never said that there wasn't study, but it's just the methodology of the studies is different. And there is also a lack of demand and consultation, and relying on these strategies on a local level and by operators. And I think even if the informations are available since 2008, the program is still ongoing. So quickly, I will answer two questions regarding the Al Umran. The first question regarding residence and how the operation was mounted. It's just a change of policy regarding the public authorities. The public authorities was giving first the help to promoter to recover by recovering taxes, but now it's a new support to the new land owner. So the ones that the support or the change is just the direct help of 100,000 dirhams. And so we have different levels of project, and the ones who want to benefit from this help or support, or we give also we brief the promoters about this program so they can work accordingly. Please use the microphone.
Donc, pour répondre
in order to answer about the assessment of public real estate which is available for Group Al Umran. Al Umran must respect the document of urbanization that are existing. They cannot, for example, do something else. If the urbanization planning is dictated to do villas, we have to respect that. Even though we have the social residence and habitat, we have it as a priority, and we're trying, we make effort to do 3 quarters of public real estate that was given or made available for Al Umran was for social habitations, and there, but what about
والفائض راه هي مؤسسه ديال الدوله، راه كاين لي ديفيدوند اللي كيرجعوا للدوله، وكيعاود تخشى به ان اوتر فونسي والامور كتمشي بهذه الطريقه هذه. نرجع للقضيه ديال البرنامج ديال 140 الف درهم. اذا رجعنا شويه للتاريخ، هذا السكن الاجتماعي بدا في المغرب بداك لي 200,000 لوجمون. لي 200,000 لوجمون اللي تداروا تعطى فيه واحد العدد كبير تداروا، ومن بعد في القانون المالي ديال 2008 خرج هذا المشروع ديال 140,000. مورا في القانون المالي ديال 2010 خرج 250,000. هذه دو بروجي ان بروموتور العمران تي سي ان بروموتور باغ هاد لي بروموتور.
So these two projects, they have realized more than 50,000 house apartments in 2 years, and this project was kept until 2000.
وبالبروموتور في 2000 لحد الان باقي ساريه المفعول. يعني ان ما يمكنش نهضروا على نطويو الصفحه ديال 140,000 ولا 250,000 حتى نهايه 2025.
شكرا جزيلا.
بالنسبه غير لو 54,000 يونيتي هو العدد ديال الوحدات اللي نجزتها العمر.
That's the number of units that the Umran achieved in this program of 140,000. Thanks everyone, thanks Professor Al-Malki Sqat, thanks for the audience and everyone who contributed in this scientific event. Thank you so much.
I was just to need your attention. So الجلسة اللي كانت مفروض تكون دلوقتي the session that was planned for now, we're not going to be able to have it because there's we need to focus with the declaration and this room has technical challenges. If you are waiting for the upcoming session, it's not going to be here. Okay? الجلسة الساعة 1:30 مش هتتعمل. اللي فيه محتاجين نركز فيه الإعلان اللي هيطلع من المؤتمر وكمان هنا الغرفة دي فيها مشاكل فهم طب نعتذر منها.
فين يعني هل بيأجلوها؟
في جلستين، في جلسة رائعة عن حقوق المرأة اوكي وفي جلسة على لبنان. فاحنا بندعوكم لحضور جلسة لبنان في القاعة المقابلة. في قاعة المقابلة على طول فيها جلسة رائعة عن لبنان وفي قاعة رئيسية فيها جلسة عن حقوق المرأة. هي التجربة المغربية لدعم حقوق المرأة. So if you go to the plenary, there's a amazing session about how the development of the women land rights in Morocco took place.
شوف غير ما تديزانستالي. شنو بغيتي دير انت دابا؟ لا شي ما تجناش صافي شنو بغيتي شحال انت دابا كلشي فيه احنا مريضين كلكو ساعه
ما عرفناش ما طلعناش ما نجحناش.
اي essaye, hein. اي